This episode of the Fiction Writers Podcast is brought to you by How to Write a Novel That Sells. Do you dream of writing a best-selling fiction novel? With the right tools, you could get there sooner than you think. Visit www.howtowriteanovelthatsells.com and unlock the secrets to writing compelling fiction taught by international best-selling author Lana McAra. Welcome to the Fiction Writers Podcast with Lana McAra, where you will discover tips, tricks, and ideas for fiction that is #unputdownable. Here you'll find new energy, new perspectives, new resources, and new ideas that will spark your creativity into a blaze of brilliance. It's easier than you think. Be sure you visit our website at www.fictionwriterspodcast.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, get out your notebook, tune in, and let's get started.
Welcome to the Fiction Writers Podcast, tips, tricks, and ideas for fiction that is #unputdownable. Today, I am delighted to welcome to our podcast, LLH Harms. For years, LLH Harms has written books, stories, and poems. Simply placed them on a shelf. With encouragement from one of her children, she finally decided to share her writing with the rest. The Aftertime is her debut novel. And she has a second project, which is a picture book that is on the way. She lives with her family in Virginia. And I'm in Florida, Lori. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I've been excited to talk to you because we had such a great conversation when we met before. And so I'm really happy to connect with you again today. So tell me, what got you started with the Aftertime story?
Actually, the idea came several years ago. My youngest, who's 20 now, was probably 6 or 7, and we were driving in a car, and he looked at me and said, "What if you had a weapon that had the power to heal if it was never used in anger?" He said he'd had a dream the night before about it, and it was so profound that it stuck with me. And the idea just kind of percolated a little bit over the years, and excuse me, I finally wrote the book. And like you said earlier, I've always written things and I complete them and put them aside and never think about it until my son kind of called me out on it one day. I was encouraging him to take a gap year and to, go travel if that's what he wanted to do. And he ended up looking at me and looking at all the boxes that I had in my little study and said, "Well, how come you don't bother to send any of your writing in?" And it just sort of hit me like, oh, okay. You love it when your kids use your own logic against you.
Oh, yeah.
So I sent it in, and here we are.
Wow. So was that the only story that you wrote, or was it the one you chose?
It was the one I chose to start with. Excuse me. I have several other ones that I'm now working on, but that was the one that I don't know. It was just because I had that connection, with my son giving me that idea and saying, because it's a powerful statement. What if you had, this knife, this weapon, which in the book it's a knife that could heal somebody, and we all have that weapon inside of us. Our words, our actions, and it really depends on which hand you want to yield. You want to wield it with. Is it compassion or is it retribution? Or so I just kind of like that idea, and especially dealing with that tween boy age group was interesting to write about because both of my boys were around the age of the characters in the book, so it was I just kind of I felt like that one should be the one I send off first.
Okay, so that's a tween book. And
middle school.
Middle school?
Yeah.
And what would you say the genre is?
Uh, it's like a historical, magical, because the knife has this magical power that enables, the person to be healed. And it goes throughout history. The story, it begins in the mid 1700s in Virginia. And it's a friendship between a Monacan boy and an English boy. And they're really not supposed to be friends. And by this time, a lot of the Monacan tribe had already left because of the encroaching English settlers. It's explained in the book why Corwin, the Monacan boy, was on him. It was his mother and his grandfather. They're unable to leave. And so they're forced to stay there. And this friendship develops. Fast forward to present day, their descendants are ironically still friends. And it's in the present day, it's 12-year-old Zach who can't quite make that step up in maturity. He's like mid-step. He enjoys being the baby of the family, but he doesn't want to be babied. And he can't make that step going up to maturity. He's just sort of frozen. You're not hearing that. And it's really about these two different timelines and about how it goes back and forth and about how they develop these friendships and what family means and how they interact with their own families.
So you have two timelines from the 1700s and then modern day. Is that right?
Yes.
What made you choose to do it that way?
I think I was a history major in college, and, my childhood was spent being dragged to every historical house, battleground, museum you can think of it between North Carolina and Virginia. And so, and one of the things I found when I was writing this book is I really knew very little about the native tribes of Virginia and North Carolina. My history had always been from the Western European perspective. And I think a lot of the smaller tribes on the East Coast get forgotten. We always think of, it's the Cherokee or, the larger tribes out West. And unfortunately, these smaller tribes get overlooked, which I think is a shame because there's so much history that can be learned. And that's one of the things with the book is I hope that when the reader reads it, they take an interest and they reach out to the Monacans. And if they can't, if you're too far away and you can't go visit their museum, perhaps look at your local tribes in your own state and, go visit and talk and find out their history, their songs, their stories. That's really one of the things that I'm hoping to accomplish with the book.
That is really interesting. Coming from Delaware, there is a tribe in Delaware that we saw in the museums as children. You go to these museums as a field trip to school, and yet we never really saw them in the history books or anything.
Yeah, it's true. Because really on the East Coast, it's the Cherokee. And I'm not saying anything about the Cherokee, but we have so many other tribes. And it's such a shame because they're really in a lot of instances, they've been struggling to survive. I know with the Monacans, they had to hire a linguist to come and recreate, help them rediscover parts of their language because apparently they knew a lot of the nouns had been passed down, but the verbs had been lost because they weren't allowed to speak it in public at school.
Wow.
And so I think that's one of the things that I want to point out to kids are the reader is, take that interest, take that time to reach out and try to learn someone else's history.
Yeah. So how did you learn it? What was your research? What did it look like to do the research for that?
I had, I read, I researched online, I conducted interviews, and my book, it's fictional, of course. And again, I'm hoping that it will inspire people to go and actually ask the experts, which are the Monicans. If you really and truly want to know about the Monacan people and their story, that's who we should reach out to. Go and sit, talk to them, hear their music, hear their stories. But there was a really great book called Monacan Millennium, which was written by Jeffrey Hantman, I believe his last name. He was a professor at UVA, which that was a really big help in doing the research for the book.
It's so important to go to the primary source, isn't it?
Yes, I did. I spoke with the museum director for the Monacan Museum in Amherst, and she was very helpful, wonderful to talk to. Just hearing their stories and what they've been through is just remarkable. That basically they just went on this mountain, Bear Mountain, and they just stayed. They refused to be absorbed, to leave, and here they are today.
Wow. Yeah. That is so interesting. So, what was your publishing process like? How did you choose how to publish the book? What did you do when you decided? What were your next steps?
Well, after my conversation with my son and my Scooby-Doo moment, as I like to call it, I was like, I sent it in, and it was, excuse me, right before the pandemic. So I will say that this process has been very long because during the process, several people involved got COVID. Some people ended up leaving. I ended up with a brain tumor in the middle of the pandemic. I know, another Scooby-Doo moment. So that everything kind of kept getting pushed back and pushed back. But the people at Brandy Lane have just been just remarkable, very helpful and understanding as a first-time author. Basically just patting me on the shoulder going, it's okay. We will get through this.
So you submitted it to a publisher then?
Brandy Lane in Richmond. Mm-hmm.
Okay, a local publisher. Wow. So how did you submit it? Like a proposal, or did you meet someone at an event?
I just submitted it.
You submitted it.
Mm-hmm. That's how they do. You submit everything online.
Online.
Mm-hmm.
So did you just send them in the manuscript, or did you have to fill out a form?
I sent the manuscript out, and then a small form, a little write-up on it. And then, that sort of tag, like, what if you had a weapon that had the power to heal if it was never used in anger? That sort of catches people, when they hear that statement.
Yes.
So.
Yes. So how long did it take then once you submitted?
Well, we just, release day was Tuesday. So, yeah, it's been about, we're going on a little over 3 years now, 4 years, just because, we had the pandemic and illness and, my son ended up having 2 back surgery. I mean, it was just like everything that could go wrong, seemed to be going wrong, but we just kept trudging along. So it was released this past Tuesday, which is
Congratulations.
like sending your child off to kindergarten.
Oh, yeah.
You're happy and relieved, but then you're like, oh, okay.
Yes, absolutely. So it's called The Aftertime by LLH Harms, and it's on Amazon, right?
Yes.
So I'd encourage everyone to go over there, support Lori, and go over there and help her out.
Oh, yeah.
Launch. This is a launch. I had forgotten, and I apologize to you that I'd forgotten that we were going to do it right at the launch.
No, that's fine. I actually, everybody was asking me, are you going to have a launch party? And I was like, no, I'm too nervous. And I ended up going to the library, believe it or not, just because that's like my comforting place, just to be around books. And you have people from all walks of life that are sitting quietly together, doing their thing. To me, it's just like mind yoga.
Yes.
Just quietly. And my friend tracked me down. And so there's a picture on our Facebook and Instagram of me peeking around and she snapping the picture. And then she took me out. So we went and had champagne. So I had a little bit of a celebration for launch day.
Absolutely. After waiting 4 years,
I know.
You have to do something.
That's what everybody was saying. Like, what do you mean you're not doing anything? I was like, no, I'm too nervous.
Yeah. So what would you say is the main question behind the book? Besides the one of think about healing, is there a theme besides that?
I think it's really about, that middle school age in that effort of trying to grow up and trying to find where they fit either in their family or in their friend group. Because one of the characters, the main character, Zach, in the present day timeline, he gets jealous and he says something which sort of starts this whole thing going on. It starts the ball rolling, so to speak. And it's just about trying to grow up and mature, and really you have to be responsible for your actions and what you say, because again, those actions and words, that's how you use it. It's that internal weapon. How are you going to use this when dealing with others?
Yes. And those words and actions can actually last beyond generations.
I feel my heart goes out to that age group now. I have a 14-year-old grandson and an 11-year-old granddaughter. And it's so different even from where my kids were, because they may have bullying at school, and then they come home and they have it online, and then they see it on the national stage with adults doing it to each other. So I feel like this age group really can't get away from people using words to tear each other down, And I think that's kind of one of the aspects of the book that I want the reader to be able to look at and say, okay, take a breath.
Yes, absolutely. So what's on the horizon for you now that you've got this one under your belt?
Actually, the picture book has evolved into an early reader chapter book. We ended up expanding it, and so I'm really excited about it. It's based on a story that I told my oldest son, when his sister went off to college, and he was feeling this loneliness of missing her. Mm-hmm. So that kind of was the basis of it. But that'll be out hopefully spring of next year.
Okay. So is that the same publisher or a different one?
It actually is, yeah. I shot them an email and said, hey, what do you think of this? And I like Brandy Lane. I love my editor, Jenny. She's the word whisperer. She just can calm me down because I kind of get, to me, writing, I've always thought of it as my paper therapist. Mm-hmm. And so the fact of trying to share it with other people has always been sort of a foreign idea, you know. And so it's kind of nice to have someone sort of just say, it's okay. It'll be fine.
And it's so refreshing to hear someone having a positive experience with the publisher. I had a good experience with my publisher as well, but that was years ago. You know, today the publishing world is a different place. And, you know, the same as with children. You're saying, you know, your grandchildren, mine too. My granddaughter's 16, my other one's 12. It's a different world than what we came up in.
Even from their parents. I mean, it's just so much just in this little block of time.
Yes. Well, Lori, congratulations on your new release. I'm so excited. I'm going to be going over to Amazon as soon as we're done here.
Thank you so much.
And everyone, leave a review. Those reviews are so important to the way the algorithm works in Amazon. So yes, leave a review. And we will be putting the links and all that in the show notes of the podcast. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for tuning into the Fiction Writers Podcast with Lana McAra, where we share tips, tricks, and ideas for fiction that is #unputdownable. Remember to visit our website at www.fictionwriterspodcast.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Fiction Writers Podcast.